It stops and goes.
Hey, Mama Tendai.
Hey, Baba, I forgot to plug in my what do you call it? So you can see me. So I'm good.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, we
Because I
don't.
would have to go out and do it again. And if I do, he may not be able to let me
Wait,
back.
what did you say, Haru? What did you say, Haru?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can put myself in because I'm on the bus.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm waiting on Baba Mosi to come back in. I guess he's coming now.
He just logged on.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
I put myself in mute.
Yeah. I don't know where the guest is at.
Okay.
Did you speak to Bambose, Baba
Yes.
Mosi?
Yes.
Okay. So he knows to log on.
Yes.
Okay. I put a message in Facebook, so I'm gonna let them know now we're up. So,
Okay.
but it's not Facebook. It's recording, but it's not streamed yet.
Okay. Technical report currently host.
So, but I'll go back on Facebook and let folks know.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I would like first to make an apology to everyone for the technical issues we've had. You know, these things do happen. We've lost quite a few minutes here. Actually, 45.
We're not on Facebook yet, bro.
I think we are.
No, I'm looking at it. I'm on the Woodson Banneker Jackson Bay Facebook page. It's not up.
Oh. Brother Harry said
It says Yahoo, a sign in to you. It says a sign in. Yahoo, something went wrong.
No, it's on there.
It is up?
Yes.
Okay.
We're up now. Okay. Facebook people.
I don't know why I don't see it.
Those other participants, I apologize again for the technical difficulties we had. We're gonna have a shorter meeting than normal, but we're gonna have a meeting. And hopefully some of you have seen the messages and you will come back on. Here we go. I'll start with just a pledge for the UNIA, you know, UNIA-ALC 2020. You know, we have to do our thing with our rituals, and we can't just open without saying something. So here we go, Division 330, RC 2020 here this evening. This is January 12th, 2024. And we are going to have this Freedom Friday Forum today discussing a matter of concern when it comes to African people. As usual, we do deal with African people. Okay, I commit my body, mind, and spirit to the protection, defense, and security of the red, black, and green. I dedicate my life to the redemption of Mother Africa and the liberation of her scattered Black children. I accept for myself and my descendants the teachings of universal African nationalism, and I promise that our children will be instilled with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people, in order that the cause of our struggle will neither falter nor fail, until all Black people are free and united through one God, one aim, one destiny. I thank you very much. And you know, we will start here now. This is a very serious discussion, you know, and the blockade and how it's affecting them. As you know, folks, Cuba has about 60% of its folks who can connect directly through bloodline with Africa. And that was something that's a test that was done in Cuba itself. We're not saying that because we want to say. The Cuban people know that. But you know that some folks in Cuba don't like to discuss that matter of race because they're Cubans and they don't want to have an issue with race. But it's something that is, and it has to be discussed. We who are outside of Cuba, who are watching what's going on in Cuba, and the rest of the world, those of us in the UNIA, CL, RC 2020 especially, you know, we are concerned about African people everywhere, and we are concerned about what's happening to African people in Cuba. Not specifically or leaving out anyone else in Cuba. We're concerned about everybody in Cuba and what's happening to them through this blockade, this economic blockade. And so, but you know, we know what history is. History says Cuba, and I'm talking about the UNIA-ACL, Cuba had the second largest, or no, more divisions, or as they called it then, branches in Cuba. I think it was 52. The largest amount outside of the United States. You know, a country with 62%, I think it's 62, African people or African bloodline today, having 52 branches of UNIA cells way back when, tells you something. African people are conscious in Cuba that they are Africans. And they are conscious of it. That's why they had that much. And you know, things have changed to some degree, but of course, everything has not changed. There are still those in Cuba who are in positions of power and influence who may not be thinking the same way we are thinking. They may not be thinking the same way African people in Cuba are thinking. What I'm trying to say is that there is still an issue of race in Cuba. It is not as it is here. It is not something that the government sponsors. It is not something that the government of Cuba wants to have within its reach. It wants to eliminate racism. But that's a very difficult thing. You can talk about it, but how do you erase it out of the minds of people? It's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen in one generation, but it needs to happen. 62% of the people, if they don't talk about themselves, if they don't understand what it means to deal with Africa, they will never understand that they themselves have to make the changes. Now, while recognizing themselves, education, etc., is different than in those days. Well, let me say, the days we're talking about when there were 52 branches, there wasn't any education to speak of. But African people got the word. They got the word through the UNIA. They got the word through the, was it the Black Man's Magazine, etc. Now, I am not going to go on with this because we have two guests, two wonderful guest speakers. Brother Bambose Shango. Brother Bambose Shango is a long-term activist. You have heard, he's been on our program before. He's discussed Cuba with us before. And he knows Cuba. And he knows African people in Cuba. And he knows about African people, not just in Cuba, but other places as well. And we also have Brother Rafiki Morris, similarly, an activist in the world where we're looking for justice, social justice, and the defeat of imperialism. Because, believe it or not, they say that word is passé, but we only have what's happening today militarily, conflict everywhere, and we know that the ugly head of imperialism is still above the ground. Okay, now, Brother Bambose, let's see if Brother Bambose got on. Brother Bambose, did you get on? Brother Rafiki?
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you for being here. Let's see what Brother Bambose may be having some technical issues. Yeah, but let's you heard what I said earlier regarding the issues of the ban in Cuba and elsewhere. But as I said earlier, the black man, one second, is, he may be trying to get in. Let's see. No. Whoa. Oh boy. Are you there, bro? Brother Haru? We need to get somebody, we need to get Brother Bambose in.
Units. I don't see him on the list here,
Okay.
on the
All right.
participant list.
Okay, let me see. He probably all right. Oh boy. Okay, Brother Rafiki, I'm
Yes,
gonna ask you to, after what I said, earlier, to open up your and give us your opinion or your starting point in this matter of dealing with the blockade and Cuba and how it's affecting African people. And not just African people, but everybody else, like I said earlier. But we specifically are speaking of African people because we think that this thing is a matter of racism. The imperialists do not care about African people, period. So I would like you to say something about what you think of this matter we're discussing this evening. Meanwhile, I'll try to get on.
really. First of all, we want to once again thank the UNIA for having us. It's always a pleasure to join you on Freedom Friday, and we're glad to be here again. The position of Africans in Cuba is complex, and it needs to be looked at carefully. People in the United States, Africans living in the United States, tend to see the world through their own lens. And so when they think of the conditions of Black people anywhere, they compare it to the conditions of Black people in the United States, and never don't take the time to understand the actual history of struggle of Africans in other places and the forms that that struggle takes. So it's in that context that I would make this statement. To the best of my knowledge, I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. To the best of my knowledge, the African living in Cuba is the most liberated African in the Western Hemisphere. The Africans living in Cuba are living in a country that is committed to their interests and has demonstrated over and over and over again a willingness to sacrifice in order to achieve the interests of the masses of their people. The General Society of Cuba considers itself to be an African country. And the great late Fidel Castro said it clearly: the blood of Africa runs through the veins of Cuba. And throughout the history of the Cuban Revolution, they have stood up for Africa. They fought for Africa. Cuban blood was spilled in Algeria. Cuban blood was spilled. Cuban blood was spilled in Namibia. Throughout the African continent, fighting for our independence. And one of the proudest things you can be in Cuba is a former freedom fighter who went to war in Africa to help liberate Africa from apartheid and colonialism in general. So I think that that's the we should acknowledge and understand that Africans in Cuba are the Africans in the Western Hemisphere. Having said that, it's true that some of the racist superstructure of ideas that existed before the revolution persist. And there are segments of the Cuban population saying these white supremacist ideas and concepts. I found in my travels to Cuba and the reports that I have been given and gotten, that this group, these race persist in Cuban society, is a very, very, very minority of the population. The biggest problems that Africans in Cuba have is that they don't have access to the things that they need because of the blockade. It's because of the blockade is right the poor hemisphere. It's because of the blockade that they continue to suffer in food and equipment that they need, their hospitals or to run their industry. You can't buy Cuba, even if the Cubans have the money for it. Contradiction between Cuba society and this kind of racist capitalist society they have in America.
Yes. Well, I've heard a lot of things, and I've been hearing, and we're hearing it's on a lot of news, and not only that, it's on many of the social media links, and what we hear is of the issues dealing with, like you said, the blockade is causing a lot of problems for people, and we need to understand that if we African people, because we can't depend on anybody else, although we have allies, I think we need to bring it to the attention of all African people here in the United States, that wherever Africans are being repressed to whatever means, and in this case, blockade, they're being repressed everywhere.
That's right.
We're being repressed here for the same reasons. This is why we have to hold on to the coattails of those politicians, white politicians, if we want to get anywhere. And this is why African people are, I don't know, maybe I'm going too far with that. But let's be clear. If we are not aware of what is happening to other people, other African people outside of the United States, because of the actions of the United States government, then the United States government will not change its policy. Cuba is in the situation it is in because of Florida Cubans, partly, mostly. Now you've got, I don't know how many, I'm sure there are not more than the millions of African people in this United States that are being ignored because the people of Florida are being catered to. They're being catered just because you want to win one state. And you got African people there in all the states who are helping you to win as a Democrat, and especially the Democratic Party. And I get kind of worked up when I think about these things. I'm sorry, but this is it. Now,
you go in Florida. That's where the Cuban racists are. that's where all the white racist Cubans are,
Yes, yes.
took their land and gave it to the masses of the, and they've hated Cuba ever since. And they've been in with every U.S. president since that time to try to take it back. When they attack Cuba, now you are correct. When the U.S. attacks Cuba and inflicts harm on Cuba, Americans in Cuba suffer the most.
Yes.
So the attack on Cuba is an American people.
Now, the United States government has had so many different means of enforcing their will on the Cuban people that I think it's very hard to understand for most people here in the United States African people because of all these different I guess what are they, laws?
Yeah, laws. Some of them.
Everything. I mean, we can't. The Cuban people can't get food. They can't get. You know, Cuba was built with U.S. technology. Every bathroom, the plumbing system, and all that. And when you embargo and people can't even get spare parts, and then you turn around and blame them for the conditions they're living in, I think that's disingenuous, to say the least. You're floating again, but hopefully we'll get you back. Okay, Baba Bambose, are you on?
No. He's not on.
Okay, let's see.
No, monopoly capitalism has a lot to do with what's going on. As you said, racism. Rafiki is back too, but it's monopoly capitalism, man. And these racists that y'all were talking about, they're monopoly capitalists, and if they want to capitalize and take Cuba and make it a capitalist oppressive system, and that's what's happening while the embargo is in place. But anyway, Rafiki is back. Rafiki, you back?
I'm back. I think Baba Mosi's technical problems could.
Well, it is storms going on in different places, you know, and that might be why Bambose can't get on, because there's some storms happening across the country, and it's here in DC too, but it's not bad, but it's storming here. But y'all, you right on point though, Rafiki. You know, are you back, Baba Mosi? You back? I saw you was on.
Yes, I'm back.
Okay, well, Rafiki hit the nail on the head, but I just wanted to add that the monopoly capitalists, these so-called Cubans that y'all spoke about that are racist, they monopoly capitalists, man. And when they got moved out, as you said, Rafiki, they want to put pressure on so that they can go back and do their capitalist foolishness, which is the same thing that's going on everywhere. Everywhere the U.S. has that, the interest is about capitalism, and that is capitalizing on the people and taking advantage of the people. But anyway, I'll stop right there, Rafiki. I know you got a lot more to share, bro. It's good seeing you too.
It's exactly correct. Cuba used to be America's playground in the Caribbean.
Gambling place.
It was the place for all the gangs to hang out, with casinos and kinds of relationships with all kinds of and in cahoots with the CIA, because people don't understand the U.S. military, and the drug lords, they're all the same people. People who were in control of Cuba when the revolution came. These are the people who the revolution ran out of because they were stealing the people's resources. They were dominating the land, former slave masters, and who they put in government there. And what people need to understand is ever since the revolution was, the U.S. has been trying to do whatever it could do to overthrow the government. And the blockade, which now is in its, what, 63rd, 64th year, has been one of the main tools used to try to overthrow the Cuban government. And it's not the only tool. They've tried to assassinate Fidel Castro some 50 sometimes. They invaded the country and were defeated. They've done all kinds of dirty tricks and nasty, no good things, aimed, they say, at the Cuban leadership, but all of these things bring harm to the Cuban people. And that means they're bringing harm to the masses of African people. And at the same time, the Cubans continue to support Africans everywhere. We have Cuban doctors everywhere taking care of our people. When COVID hit, Cuba developed their own vaccine and was treating Africans for free all over the planet Earth. Throughout the Caribbean, they even wanted to help in the United States, but this country, with their own backwardness, refused their help. The Cubans couldn't buy syringes. They don't have the capacity to produce syringes. But because of the blockade, they couldn't buy syringes to administer the medication that was necessary to save people from this pandemic. This is the kind of thing that this blockade does.
Yeah, Bambose has joined us too, y'all.
Yeah, he got the whole crew there.
Yeah, in the picture. Yeah, Bambose's with us, Bambose now.
Okay. I think he can see us, but he's not. He can't get on. He can't get on with video.
Yeah, he's muted too.
He's having audio and video issues right now.
Okay.
So, Baba Heru, maybe you can help us out in this case. Okay, but okay, I don't want to do it. That call name, I'm a crawl. Okay,
No, that's Zama.
crawl.
That's Zama.
Mau crawl. I'm sorry, Mau crawl.
That's Zama. That
Mau
is Zama.
circle. No,
that's Zama. That's Zama,
Zama?
Baba Mosey. That's Zama.
Oh.
Man, that's Zama.
Oh hell! I didn't know he would have that.
Mau Crowd. That's that's one of his nicknames.
Yeah, okay, his handles. Okay. Well, okay. Baba, you know, Shango, you can ask some questions. Let me try to get hold to get Bambose on technically. If you know, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Rafiki was doing fine. I mean, Rafiki was doing fine. I just saw Bambose up now. I didn't know he'd still having tech issues. But Rafiki's doing fine, explaining, because like what one most important thing Rafiki said is, despite this long time embargo, Cubans never stopped helping Africans. They've always helped Africans, and in fact, like they said, they're Africans. They're helping their brothers and sisters and that's all over the world, Africa and everywhere. So it makes good sense for us as Africans to become conscious and understand that we should practice Mobutu. We should practice, supporting those who support us. And in fact, most of the medical treatments and people who went to school in Cuba that have gone out all over the world, Ghana, all over the world, doing great works. And so it's critical to understand that the people that support you, you should support. And those are our brothers and sisters. So all of this stuff about the racism, the minority that Rafiki was speaking about, they're upset because they got moved out during the revolution. They got pushed out. And so consequently, what they're trying to do is to cripple, the economy of Cuba. And so we in America, Africans in America and all over the world, need to be supportive of our brothers and sisters in Cuba and to force the embargo to be lifted. It's a genocidal move. There's no question about it. Because once you stop food supplies from coming in, what happens? You cripple the people. Mama Tendai, you got your hand up. You wanted to ask a question, Mama Tendai?
Right now is that those who are, like you were talking about, who are in Florida, it is to their best interest to keep there from being a relationship with where the embargo would be rescinded, because they're making money, because their few relatives that they left behind, they're sending stuff there for them to sell and for them to make money. You know what I'm saying? And so it's still it's a situation in which it's not cut and dry. Okay, we know what it is that our people are trying to do, but we also have to understand that those who made it, who were thrown out and who ended up here, do not have a vested interest in what is happening to those who have left behind, because
True.
we're still able to make money here in the United States off of the plight of those who are there.
Excellent point. Monopoly capitalism, that's what I call it.
It continues.
Exactly. Baba Mosi,
Yes.
back to you.
Okay. I tried again because I sent some hookup to Baba Shango, and I don't know why he's not getting it. But anyway, yes. All right. That's, part of this discussion is the Cuban people. We know they're, in solidarity with Africa. We know that Africans are in solidarity with Africans in Cuba. And we also know that what is happening at this present moment in Cuba is that the economic stranglehold that the United States has on the economy of Cuba is causing a lot of problems for everybody in Cuba. But let's face it, Africans are still trying to get to that point where they are above, or let's say on a level playing field with all other Cubans.
Hey, Baba,
For
can
instance,
I
the
can I
Cubans
just
who-
say one more thing?
Yes,
Regardless of their plight, we have to applaud those brothers and sisters who are in Cuba, because this embargo has been going on since what, 65, and they have not caved yet. They do not have a situation ongoing in the country where there's a constant unrest and they fighting each other and whatever. And if it is, it's squashed. They have been able to survive. And as Baba has said, sending doctors all over everywhere. Folks don't even know that people in the United States get a special, approval to be able to go over there and study with those universities that are training doctors in Cuba, because of their African genius and like you had said, when they like developing that serum during COVID and so on and so forth. And they've been able to do that with everything and to be able to stay afloat. And I just refer to it as African genius.
Excuse me, Baba Mosi.
yes.
You, El Haru, Bambose is asking, can we unmute him on this end? So either you as a co-host or the host.
No, I'm not.
You have to ask Zama to unhost. I mean to unmute, because I have an unstable internet connection.
Okay, Zama, you saying?
Yes.
Yeah, he's the co-host now.
Oh, Zama, can you unmute? Can you try to unmute?
Already did. It is still not coming through.
Oh, okay.
Can he go out and come back in possibly?
He had problems even getting in.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yes, Mama Tendai, I agree with you that we do have to applaud them. I mean, let's face it, they are standing there with what is happening with the United States with these embargo attempts is that they want to destabilize Cuba to the point where people will get out there and riot. And you know, they've had some issues, and mainly with black folks in the city. And that's the point I'm at, where, you know, this economic issue is being fed by these embargoes, and what the issues mentally, that the mental issues, and I'm talking about what's being going to the African people and all Cubans, as a matter of fact, coming from the fact that they're now open to the world and on the internet, and they're picking up all kinds of stuff, and so they feel they ought to be living in a certain way. They don't care about who's causing the issue of the economy. And I'm mainly young people, because, you know, young people, they didn't come through the revolutionary period and all that, but some of the young people today are like young people everywhere. You know, they don't really care who caused what. They want a certain lifestyle. And when you have people in Cuba who has relatives in Miami and other places who are sending money to Cuba so that these people can live at a higher level of comfort than most Cubans, especially black Cubans, then you know you can have an issue there. Okay.
Plus some are being,
I will now,
Baba,
Baba
plus
Bambose should
also
be able to come
some
in
are
then.
being paid. Some are
Yeah.
being paid.
But
Yeah, and you know, I mean, the Cubans, I mean, it's a country, and countries have problems. Countries have contradictions. And the question becomes, what course do they have to redress their issues? In Cuba, the masses have the right to disagree with the government. They have the right. And the government does not claim to always be right. They make mistakes. And if you study Cuban history and if you see the progress of the revolution, you will see that they admit to their errors, not only in the treatment of Africans, but in the treatment of women in the society, in the treatment of the children in their society. Cuba just released a new family code, which gives equality to everybody in the society, male and female, identifies the rights of the children, identifies the rights of the women, identifies the rights and responsibilities of the fathers and parents, but also identifying the rights of the whole society to take care of these families. So the family matter is not just a question of me and my wife and my kids. My family is the responsibility of the whole of the community. And we work together to resolve our issues and problems. And this is the process that's going on inside of Cuba. This is the way by which the racism that has existed and persisted in Cuba has been combated over the years. And the society has changed. They used to duck the issue of race in Cuba. But if you go to Cuba now and talk to the Cubans about it, they openly admit that they have issues. They know what the issues are. They know who's responsible for the issues, and they know what's being done to resolve the issues. Unlike the United States, where the issue is that racism is an inherent part of the capitalist ideology, and it cannot be resolved. Now, here's some issues that I have about Black people in relationship to Cuba. Is that Black people in the United States don't know anything about Cuba, don't know the history of Cuba, don't know what Cuba has done for them or for other Africans around the world. Don't have a clue. But they're quick to say, well, there's racism in Cuba, there's racism in Cuba, there's racism in Cuba. I hear all these people talking that stuff and they ain't doing nothing to fight the racism in America. They're sitting right here taking it. but they're pissed off. They think they see it somewhere else. To me, this makes no sense. In the United States, there's a very, very, very strong movement in solidarity with Cuba. That movement is largely white. And the focus of that movement is to get primarily the white population to put pressure on the US government to change their policy. The Cubans do not expect the Africans in the United States to spend our time trying to change the policy of the US government. Our relationship to Cuba should be very different.
Yeah.
Because we shouldn't be trying to get the US government to change its policy to Cuba. We should be trying to overthrow the US government. We should be trying to build a different kind of society that would not have these draconian laws punishing people because they don't agree with what we think. The best thing we can do to support socialism in Cuba is build socialism in the United States. But we want to criticize other people who have taken on this struggle to fight against the most powerful enemy on the face of the earth and criticize their internal dynamics, but we don't want to organize ourselves to engage in the same struggle to get our own liberation. And this bugs me so much. It was the same thing in Zimbabwe. Oh, the Zimbabweans should have did this and the Zimbabweans should have did that, and the Zimbabweans bent over for the British, and the Zimbabwe waged the armed struggle to get their independence. We don't want to fight to get off the back of the bus. But we think we got the right to criticize somebody. And this is part of the issue. And I've had these conversations with the Cubans, and I told them the same thing. We understand you want to end the blockade, but that is not the focus of my activity. The focus of my activity is to defeat my enemy, which just happens to be your enemy. And we'll continue to fight to defeat our enemies while you get these white folks to try to get them to change their policy. What sense does it make for them to ask me to get Biden to change his policy when I ain't never voted for one of these pigs in my life and have no intention of doing it before I die and meet my maker? No, that's not our activity. Our activity is to organize ourselves to be free. And that is the greatest thing we can do to help the Cuban people, is to fight the fight, because we're in the belly of the beast. America, this is the beast. We live here. We know it better than anybody, because we've been here since the beginning. But we're so busy trying to be American, we forget we never was American. This ain't our land. This is stolen land. We are captives on this land, just like the people of Cuba. Only the people of Cuba wasn't willing to remain captive. They stood up and made a revolution to bring an end to some of their suffering. We still running around here behind these Democrats. What other people do. Ain't got the courage of our own convictions. Right now, our brothers and sisters in Gaza are being massacred. And I'm hearing black people jump up and say, what they got to do with me? Can you understand that? What they got to do with me? The same settler colonialism that they doing to those people in Israel is the same settler colonialism that snatched your black butt off of the African shore and brought you over here against your will. And you can't see the relationship between what they're doing to the Palestinians and what they're doing to you. You can't see the relationship of what they're doing to Africans in Cuba and what they're doing to you. So I do have issues around the question of race in Cuba, but it have more to do with the lack of organization and consciousness and understanding of these Africans in the United States who think they know everything but don't know nothing, don't study nothing, don't understand nothing, but got a whole lot to say. We love Cuba. I used to tell people The only president I've ever had was Fidel Castro.
I can understand. I can understand your sentiments, my brother. Now, you know, we know that unless African people here in the United States, just as they came out for South Africa and got on the streets and were conscious of what needed to be done to remove apartheid and to get rid of racism in South Africa. You know that African people here now have to get together if they need to change things anywhere else where African people are suffering.
Yeah.
On the continent of Africa itself, our people do not know what is happening to African people because of the kind of economic structures that are dominating the trade or the economies of the African people. We fail to see it, and so we fail to know about it. Or we've got so much of our own issues to deal with, we don't think we need to get in there. And then, of course, they're Africans, and we're not African. It's a complicated situation, I think. Those of us who are conscious are frustrated because of what's going on. But do you think we have a chance in this period, this new century, of raising the consciousness of African people here so they will understand that what the Cubans are doing in Florida, we ought to be doing something different, because African people are suffering in Cuba because of the machinations of the Cubans in Florida. How do we get people to understand this? We are putting a whole lot of African people in powerful positions here in the United States. We got senators, we got congressmen, we got mayors, we even got governors, or maybe one governor.
You ain't got him. They just look.
Well, that is how we're thinking. We got these people.
I didn't vote for him. You vote for him?
No, the whole thing is,
I didn't vote for him, and they do not represent me. They do not represent our people. Even those of us who voted for him don't understand how they voting for somebody who don't care nothing about them.
well, this is what I'm trying to say. How do we have to get to understand this? How do we raise that consciousness that, you know, we got to pressure them the same way the Cubans in Florida are pressuring them to get their way?
Yes, African
people, what are we doing?
Our people are gaining consciousness every day.
Okay.
I am not frustrated. I'm enthused. I don't see us losing. I see capitalism collapsing. I see imperialism falling. And probably most of us don't understand our role in it because we don't understand the dynamics of the African struggle. Our people's struggle against capitalism and imperialism has one abiding characteristic, and that is it is mass. And a lot of times in our movement, you don't know anything is happening until the masses hit the street. You don't see it. It happens behind your scenes, under the table, behind your back. And one day you look up and here come 1 million people and you say something's going on. Look at what happened in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Some military men took power. Everybody jumped up and said, oh, it changed overnight. They jumped up and ran the French out. They jumped up and ran the French out of Mali, out of Burkina Faso, out of Niger. But it didn't happen overnight. Because we saw those people in the streets in Mali for the last 3 or 4 years, and they're hundreds of thousands. They didn't make the news because 100,000 black people ain't news. But the pressure was there all along. The masses were rising up all along. And it's only when it reached a point where they was able to take power that people acknowledged that something was going on. The same thing is happening right now in the United States. I meet these young people and they come into the door talking about we need political education. We need organization. We need to understand colonialism and imperialism. People, this is 16, 17, 15-year-olds coming up out of high school, entering into our movement today. It's different. It's different than what it was. And it's changing. 10 weeks, 12, 14 weeks ago, nobody knew what Zionism was. We've been yelling about Zionism all of my political life for over 50 years. Nobody was paying attention. But today, everybody knows that Zionism is genocide. This happened in a matter of 3 or 4 months. Everybody knows that Zionism is genocide. And that's a big difference. Because you bring down that Zionist state, you're going to affect this racist state called the United States of America. So we have to understand the dynamics of this mass struggle we engaged in. And we have to know that this work we're doing behind the scenes, these things you're doing like this program here, that raise the people's consciousness just a little bit, gives them a little bit better understanding. These things are really, really important because under the surface, these are the things that are going to drive our masses to the streets. And we know that when our masses go to the streets, ain't nothing can stop them. Never could in the United States. But anything short of that, we ain't getting nothing out of it. We know that too. Because Kwame Ture told us all the time, we got to bleed for everything we want. So we want some rights, we got to spill some blood. And the only time we're willing to spill some blood is when we're moving in a mass. So we have to keep organizing and organizing and organizing. And when the mass is ready to move, it will move.
Yeah. Well, Mama Tenda, you had your hand, you had a hand up. She might have stepped away. Yeah.
No, Baba, I didn't have my hand up.
Oh.
I already commented. I
Oh,
was just
okay,
saying
okay.
that the brother was speaking truth to power. That was all I would put in the thing. I was saying he's teaching now.
Okay. All right. Well, you know, let me try to get back to a point on the subject of our discussion, and that is how we're talking about dignity of African people who are suffering in Cuba at this point. Mama Tanda, you mentioned it, and Rafiki mentioned it, that they ought to be commended for staying, because without them supporting the revolution of Cuba would have been gone already. Let's face it, they're the people who are the poorest. They're the people who had the history of poverty in Cuba. They're the people who are rising up out of poverty. A lot of African people, and a lot of those people who came from the peasantry in the rural areas. A lot of people don't know the history of Cuba, as Robert Rafiki said earlier, so they don't understand what is happening. But a lot of stories, a lot of things are being peddled about the Cuban people. We ought to know that what they're suffering has a lot to do with what we're doing here in the United States, what our government is doing. And again, I want to say that we need to do something. We need to get people conscious that the action to be taken to stop this is to get rid of these embargoes that are taking food out of the mouths of the people in Cuba. The buildings that African people are living in downtown Havana, old Havana, they like to call it. A lot of those buildings, the majority of those people are African people. They're living in these buildings and they're falling apart. They're crumbling. There are issues every day because maintenance can't be done because they're not getting materials. And like I said earlier, a lot of what they got to build those buildings, the infrastructure, the plumbing and everything else came from the United States. And with an embargo for everything except maybe some food and medicine, I'm not even sure if they have taken that away. It's causing the society in Cuba to suffer. They're suffering. And instead of people looking and say, look what's happening to them and falling for that narrative about inefficiency in the government and the fact that, the government can't 100% support its people. They have to have, to this day, they're still rationing food. People don't understand that this is all the problems of the embargo against food and other matters. The embargo is not just from the United States. The embargo is because the United States dominates the world economically, and a lot of, let's say, commercial entities are afraid to deal with Cuba because they're afraid of what the United States will do to them. The United States controls the currency movements, hopefully not for long. And so people are afraid to deal with it. The United Nations, year after year after year, have passed resolutions to end this blockade. The United States like to talk about, Cuba and other places are not paying attention to UN resolutions, and they're, contravening a lot of decisions made in the United Nations. Meanwhile, just 2 countries in the world are stopping the world from trading with Cuba and giving Cuba an even chance to prove itself that it can take care of its people and to prove itself that they're not racist, and how the African people are suffering in Cuba is not the fault of a particular race in Cuba. How are we going to get this message out? And how are we going to deal with this? Because I think that's, every time we have elections, we allow these people in Florida to jump up and down and talk about, Castro. The Castros are not there. Fidel has passed and his brother has resigned. There are new Cuban people in the government. And yet we're still having this mess. Communism has fallen in the Soviet Union. And yet still we're having this mess. The whole thing is they want to do what they were doing before. They want to turn Cuba again into the, may I use the term? The whorehouse of the Caribbean.
If I better not say that. I better not say that.
Well, they want to do it.
Yeah, no, but you also you have to look at Cuba in its context. You know, Cuba is in the Caribbean, and
Yeah.
and quite frankly, there's some backward reactionary governments in the Caribbean.
Mm.
Outside of Cuba, maybe St. Vincent. I don't think you can find a government in the Caribbean that is committed to the interests of the people of the Caribbean. And it's Cuba alone. It's Cuba alone. When hurricanes devastate these small islands and nobody cares about the damage or the death, it's Cuba alone that sends doctors to help these people, that sends their young men to help rebuild. It's Cuba. And the rest of these countries in the Caribbean are nothing but tools of the United States. From the Bahamas to the Virgin Islands to Puerto Rico. We know what's happening in Haiti. We know about the Dominican Republic, and we know what's going on in Jamaica and Barbados and Trinidad and Antigua, Barbuda. We know. And these are, you're talking about the prostitutes of the United States. That's what the Caribbean is. The whorehouse of the United States. And they're fighting for the right to be the highest paid prostitutes. None of them is fighting for their freedom. None of them is fighting to break their ties with this US pig. They're siding with them, hating on them. While they're hating on the Cubans, while the Cubans are in their hospitals serving their people. I saw that in Trinidad. Denouncing Cuba at the same time that their medical system is dependent on Cuban doctors who have come there to serve their communities. And this is how vicious this capitalist system is, and how vicious this propaganda is, and how many lies they tell. We have to, Africans in the United States, we have to grow up. You know, I mean, you asked the question, how do we deal with those crazy people in Florida, those crazy Cubans? I have no idea. I don't know how we deal with them. Because I don't know how we deal with the Democrats. And as long as them Democrats are in power, them crazy people in Cuba are going to be in power, in Miami. And that's the problem. The problem is not the people in Miami. The problem is the Democratic Party. The problem is the Republican Party. But especially the Democratic Party, because we vote for them over and over and over and over again. So we have to begin to have some kind of analysis that makes us do the things that are in our best interest. The UNIA was known as a race-first organization. And a lot of people didn't understand that and said that the UNIA was kind of reverse racist kind of thing when you're talking this race first. But what race first really means is that you do those things that are in your own best interests. You do those things that serve you, that keep you alive, that keep you going and growing and developing first. Because you can't help nobody else if you died. That's race first. This is the first law of nature, self-survival. So this is the kind of thinking we need to get to these Africans in the United States. We need to think about ourselves first. If we think about ourselves first, we would never vote for the Democratic Party. Never. If we think about ourselves first, We would never depend on the president or the Congress or even the city council to solve the problems that we have. Because we ain't new to none of this. We've been going through this thing for 400 years. We know who the enemy is, but we're so busy trying to get a seat at his table that we don't know how to organize our own table, how to grow our own food, how to feed ourselves, how to educate our own children. We expect our enemies to do these things for us. You know, Africans, most of y'all have known me since I was a child. And one thing that has happened over the years is I lost the filter on my mouth. I can't help it. I'm 67 years old and I don't have time to play these games with my people. Stop it. You so busy worried about being the next big rapper. Okay, let's make you the next big rapper. And let's take all of the next big rappers and put them all together and pile all their money and wealth and resources up in one big pile and let them have that. That's not 1 inch of an iota of the wealth that these people are stealing from us throughout this country and around the world. And it's not going to benefit not 1.000% of our population. It has nothing to do with the masses of our people or solving our problems. All of these entertainers and celebrities and politicians ain't going to do nothing for us if we don't do it for ourselves. And if we can't do nothing for ourselves, quite frankly, I don't know what we can do to help the Cubans. We need to pray and hope they continue to help us, because we the ones that's lost and confused and don't know what's going on. You think them Cubans don't know the reason they can't get rice is because of Uncle Sam 90 miles to the north? Sure they know. Because they've been fighting these people for generations. This ain't just no new thing. Granddaddy did it. Daddy did it. I'm doing it. My children won't do it. This is going generation by generation inside of Cuba. And the Africans in that society are getting stronger and stronger and more power as we go. We only see what happens in Havana. We don't get outside of Havana and go to those areas where there's nobody there but Africans. And the Africans in Cuba are running those spaces. Because in Cuba, you run the neighborhood you live in. Everybody. They got this thing called the Committee for the Defense of the Revolution. Every community have their own committee. And the people in that community run that community. So if you go in the areas of Cuba where there's nobody there but Africans, it's the Africans running things. Everything. From the dog catcher to the food to the everything. So, but we don't know Cuba. We know what people tell us, and we think we know. And we want to take our ideas about things and impose it on people. But we need to we have a responsibility to the world. We the enemy seed inside the beast. We that one element that they cannot contend with. Never have been able to and never will be able to. We are them. We are the ones that burned down all their cities. We are them. We the ones that shut down all their schools. These are the people who did that. But we did it as a mass. And now we have to do it as a conscious mass. We got to get organized. We got to get organized. The world waits for us, you know, these Africans in the United States. The world waits for us. As foolhardy and useless as that Black Lives Matter movement appeared to be from this side, from the side of the people of the world, all they saw was black people standing up. And it gave them courage. And it gave them a reason to stand up and to continue to resist. And they're looking at us as an example and a model of how to fight against the enemy, not knowing that we didn't have a clue about what we was doing. Am I lying? Let me tell me if I'm
Oh, but there are a lot, there's plenty of truth in what you're saying. You know, my thing is sustenance. How do we sustain the struggle? Because it seems that as soon as you get to a point where it seems that you're making a move to retain, or not just to retain, but to gain more power, some of us are going to be bought out.
Yeah, they are.
And so the wheels stop grinding as soon as the dollars start gets, you know, to certain people.
You got
Simple.
you got to do like Malcolm. Make the price of killing them higher than the price of letting them live. The worst thing they could have did was kill Malcolm X. Point of view of Malcolm X, because Malcolm X is known all over the world. We have to stand up, and it's at this there just is no alternative. There just is no alternative. We have to stand up, and we have to get it together, and we have to stop trying to make other people think we got something we ain't got. You want to see an organization that is building and growing generation to generation behind closed doors? Look at the Nation of Islam. Nobody knows what power the nation has. Nobody knows what resources the nation commands. Nobody knows how many people are in the Nation of Islam. Nobody knows how many families are in the nation's schools. Because nobody needs to know. And this is what we need to be doing. We need to be organizing ourselves. We need everything. So finding a place to start is not an issue. We could start anywhere. Start in your own household, start on the block you live in, start in your children's school, start at your place of work, start in your place of worship. You know, we need everything. So wherever you are, you got a place to start. But you got to start. We got to do it. You can't talk it. It ain't a word. It's a thing. Stop. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. You're just giving your point of view. Robert Congo?
There are a couple of things that's very good about what Cuba is doing. Cuba offers anyone that want to learn to be a medical doctor, come there free. They teach you Spanish and they teach you to be a doctor. Okay, and we as Black people here, we have a health problem. But most Blacks who, I mean, and when you finish, you don't owe $200,000 worth of loan because they're teaching you free. That's one thing. But Cuba go all the way to South Africa and fight for the liberation of apartheid. But the Caribbean and CARICOM don't have the guts to have them become a member.
Well,
okay. Just think about that. Okay.
like we were saying, you know, that was said earlier. You know, but Rafiki, you know, you said something. I don't want to repeat that. But you know, let's face it. There's a dependency syndrome.
Yes.
The people of the Caribbean are lost without tourism. Most of them. They have nothing else to exchange but their paradise for the dollar that is not really something that's worth anything except in the mind.
But if all of them are organized and
They are organized. You've got the
organized as a
CARICOM.
CARICOM, guess what? The United States and Canada can't stop it.
Well,
And guess what? Guess what? Okay. There's something that most people don't know about the Caribbean. It's the only place on earth that's 12 months out of the year that can be vacation there. Other places that may have beaches and Hawaii and all that, the water is too cold at certain times of the year. The Caribbean is one of the few places that, the Mediterranean gets shut down. Spain gets shut down quite a few times. Okay, there's no African country that's pushing tourism, but guess what? So therefore, there's no solid good reason that I see that you can't help your fellow man who went and liberated some of your brothers on the continent.
Yeah, but I lived in Trinidad for 12 years. In Trinidad, we used to say if you spit on the ground, you grow a person. That's how fertile the land is.
yeah.
Right? I lived in a village on the northern coast, and surrounding the village were abandoned plantations. 100 acres of mangoes that sit on the tree and rot every year and come back. But Trinidad is importing food. The #1 food distributor in Port of Spain is Kentucky Fried Chicken. You run around here worried about tourism and you can't feed your own babies. You importing canned food. This is insane.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about what you want to be, what you want to be, what you want to. Come on, take care of yourself.
Cuba has
So
one doctor for every 1,000 people.
Importing cars, importing everything we want to be like the U.S. We want to have our cell phones and all of this stuff, but the basic things. We're not organized to take care of ourselves. And Baba Mosi is right. It's a dependency syndrome. They feel somebody owe them something. And they're right. Because imperialism took everything they had, stole everything they had. But the one thing that can't be taken from you, the one thing that you have to surrender is your dignity and your self-respect. So if you don't have dignity and self-respect, you can't blame your enemy for that. You have to blame yourself for that. And this is the issue that I have with the Caribbean. CARICOM watches what they do to Haiti, encourages it, participates in it, votes for it, takes money from these pigs. Can you believe that? You got Caribbean states sending police to Haiti on the U.S.'s dime to support a president who has never been elected. And ultimately to suppress the people of Haiti. No, these people have no dignity. So Sekou Touré said, and when I was young, I read this, I didn't understand it. He said, the political leader is the cultural representative of a people. I didn't know what that meant. And I studied and I studied and I studied, and I finally figured out what he was saying. What he was saying is that if you have a government that is reactionary, that is lazy, that is corrupt, it's because the people accept reactionary, lazy, and corrupt leadership. You get the kind of government you deserve. If the people are organized and militant and revolutionary, they're going to put an organized, militant, revolutionary government in place. So when you see all these weak-kneed governments throughout the Caribbean, these neo-colonial puppet states, it's because the people have a neo-colonial mind and are willing to live with that. And it brings us back to the same point. The Cubans, instead of us being worried about helping them, we really use them as a model of a people who, under the most dire circumstances, find a way to survive and develop on their own dime, on their own effort, on their own. They have no choice. But by having no choice, they prove to us that it can be done.
Yes. Well, you know, my brother, okay, we've got a little bit of time, but then let me say this. You mentioned something about where Africans in Cuba are majority, or where they're mainly the people, or if they're totally the population. They are in control. And that's one of the points I wanted to get to is, why aren't we seeing Africans in control when we get these narratives from, let's say, the corporate press, or even some things in social media? I mean, because this is what confuses some of us, because we're hearing things and we just think that, okay, those black faces are not up there in these high positions, so it means black faces are not in positions anyway. We're looking at the reflection.
Yeah, but
bottom to the top. Now, what do you say?
Well, first of all, you ain't looking at the bottom, because the mass media don't show the bottom. And the second thing is, you're looking at the representation at the level of the state, but you're not necessarily looking at representation at the level of the people. If you look at Cuba's diplomatic corps, you'll find Africans all over it, everywhere, all over the world. For many, many, many years, the Cuban representative in the U.S. was Clinton Adlam, an African, with a large number of Africans on his staff. And then many of the people that you see in Cuba who look white will tell you they're Africans. And if you check their history, you find out they're right. I went through that when I was in Cuba, and I told this old guy, well, I'm an African. And he looked at me, he said, I'm an African too. I said, you ain't no African. He said, yes, I am. And he took me into his house, and he was the head of the Santa Ria in that community. He had the largest shrine. Everything about him was African. He had a picture of his granddaddy who was African, but he looked white. So we got to be careful. Then you know that this media only shows you the negative. You know that. So the only black people you see on the news is criminals. It's 50 million of us. If 1 out of every 2 of us is criminals, that means it's what? 10 million, 5 million, 10 million. But they don't show the 40 million. They show you the criminals, because they have a narrative. They show you them demonstrations in Cuba But they never translate the things that the people is chanting for you. All you do is see people running down the street, screaming and yelling, but you don't know what they demonstrating about. So we can't go by that, you know. With Cuba, you should go to Cuba. That's the first thing. Just go there. Go there and just be. Within 5 hours of getting off that plane, you will realize you're in a different world. When you see the police in Cuba, you don't get afraid. You go up to them and ask them for help. You see them helping people carry their groceries home and escorting children across the street and things like that. It's a different reality. Go there. It's not that hard. And when you go there, seek out the Black people. They ain't hard to find. They ain't hard to find. I met some of the greatest people I've met in my life in Cuba.
I'd like to share something on screen if I can. I'm not even sure if I can do this. Let's see. Is anybody seeing that photo?
Pictures.
Okay, let's see. Are you seeing a photo?
All of them. We've seen all of them.
Oh, all the photos. Not okay. Wow, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay. All right. I want to show just one photo
Right there.
here.
Right there.
Yeah, this
I know
one.
what you're doing. Yeah.
Let me see if I can get that up.
Just double click it, bro.
I just did that, but
It's coming.
it's coming.
Yep.
Well,
It's taking a while to get up there, or what? What is the story here?
It is, but it's coming.
These things take some time.
Double click it again.
It says I'm screen sharing, but it doesn't. Okay. Stop that share. Okay, let me see if I can go back to it. I stopped the screen share, but let's see.
while you do it, let me just say something. In every country in the Caribbean and Latin America, there are Black people. But if you look at the travel magazines that tell you to come there, most likely you will not see a Black face in the whole book that you look at. And sometimes it even happens in some of the English Caribbean places too. Or they do, they show you the lighter skinned person. That's something that's a work in progress.
Is the photo up?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Oh, great. Well, do you recognize anybody in that photo?
Is that Fidel?
Huh? That's Cuba.
Go ahead.
The place called Trinidad de Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
And those are some brothers that I encountered in Cuba, in Trinidad de Cuba. I walked around the area. I saw where African people lived, and and that is why I can tell you that I didn't get into the political arena of what's saying, but I know there were African people who had I think they were called cooperative motels or something, but they were cooperative, and they were running some of those things. But then there were some people that were around who, like this brother here in the pink. There were some, what I was saying, some indigent types, but then there are others who were in certain kind of cultures, And we had a lot of conversation. And this is why I can say that when I say that 62% of African people in Cuba is because I talked to some of these people. So, okay, that was just, I just wanted you to, yeah, I just wanted you to get a look at that. Okay, all right, thank you. So my brother, are you still there? Baba Rafiki?
He's here.
Oh, okay. So that's why is that's you. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted you to get a look at that picture and to see that some of us have been to Cuba and some of us have seen, have gone some places where we've seen Africans, and one of the things I saw was as I traveled from Trinidad to Cuba by road across the mountains back to Havana, passed through many towns, many rural towns, and the population that I saw, I can tell you quite clearly, I saw the future of Cuba. I saw what Cuba looks like for real. And if we allow this government here in the United States to continue to do what it's doing, because this consistency in keeping this embargo means that the future of these children will be dire in the sense of perhaps poverty, perhaps, I don't know. They do need, Cuba cannot survive this continuing embargo. They may survive in a sense, but when I say survive, I mean as it is at this moment. They're losing every year. Things are deteriorating. And if you look at the people and what the Cuban government is doing with education and health and all that stuff, you don't want that to deteriorate. You see the children in their school uniforms. And I passed through those villages and those towns, and I watched the children. I was lucky enough to pass through while school was, I guess, ending for the day. And then seeing all these children coming out, and it was just such a wonderful sight. Every single village I passed through, there was poverty. You can see the issues that people had with transportation. You can see them using horses to pull, discarded vehicles. You're just using the wheel. The engines probably weren't working, but they're using horses and they're pulling these things. And people were, and you have to give them credit, these Cuban people. I mean, the fact that they can sustain themselves on a daily basis without totally starving, without totally being in need of health care, without, I guess, attacking each other because they don't have something. You pass through the town. One time I passed through an area, it was close to Havana, getting there, pitch dark, can't find our way because we didn't understand what was going on with the lights and all that stuff. There were lights in Havana, but we were taking a risk. And we stopped where we saw people, and not a soul was, it's not like who are these people? What do you want? It's not like they didn't look at you with suspicion. They didn't look. You just asked for some direction, and you got it. I mean, to me, I said, this is a place. It's a peaceful place, and if a revolution can make a people be so proud of themselves that they don't have to eat each other alive, despite the fact that they were in so much need, then something is right about it. Something is very right about it. And a lot of these people were African people. But, my brother, as I told some of them there, I was very afraid of this matter where Cubans in Miami are sending funds to their peeps in Cuba. They're building restaurants, they're building all kinds of businesses, and African people don't have that. African people don't have that resource. If they do, they're very few. And so that is why the questions I have this evening is from that little experience I had. But I'm happy to say I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that those of us here in the United States can become conscious enough, like you were saying, we got to do. Maybe we can move this thing, because let's face it, we have what is it here? All these acts of embargo here. Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917, Foreign Assistance Act of 1961, the Cuban Assets Control Regulations of 1963, the Helms-Burton Act of 1996, Trade Sanction Reform and Export Enhancement Act. Look that up, folks. Look those things up, and you'll see what is coming down on the Cuban people and why they're, and you will have to say, man, I wish I have the resilience these people have to resist, because that's resistance, to resist this imperialist attack. Okay, folks. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, Baba Shango, you're on? Or you still can't say anything, but you're on. Okay, my brother. I know, but I mean, I know, Bambose, you would love to put in a few words here, and I can just hear you. But unfortunately, the technical issues you have, you can't do that with us. But I appreciate your being with us. And we got to do this again, because one thing I think we got to do is we got to keep people understanding that Africans must be free, and they must be free of the embargo in Cuba in order to be free. And so I will turn this over for your last words, Baba Rafiki, or let's say if there are any questions anyone has for Baba Rafiki, it's open to you right now. Looks like folks are stunned by what I had to say. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Yes, I did. I did go to Cuba, and I did cross the backbone of the country. So yeah. All right, Brother Rafiki. Let's hear what you have to say. In final words, you're muted. You're muted. You're muted, Brother Rafiki. I'm not hearing you. Let me see if I can unmute you here. Ding, 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 ding.
Ah,
Yeah.
I thought you were talking too much.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's been, yeah, yeah, and I appreciate it because you have been on almost the whole period.
Yeah. No, I really, really appreciate the effort to make people aware of what's happening in Cuba. And I encourage people to go. and find out for yourself. Bambose had put some things in the chat that I thought would have helped our conversation.
They disappeared though. I didn't. Are you
I
still
see.
seeing it?
He said that between
Oh,
2022 and 2023, the blockade cost Cuba $4.8 billion.
4.87 billion. Wow.
And, he also pointed out that two of the three Cuban vice presidents are Africans, and one of them is a woman.
Mhm.
But I do think people should go to Cuba. But I also think we need to take the time to get to know our people. You know,
Mhm.
we can't go through this life without knowing that. Malcolm said, if you don't know what's going on in the Congo, you can't know what's going on in Mississippi. And that's true. And we need to know our people, because unity is not an automatic thing. Unity is something that you have to consciously construct. And you can only unite with somebody once you get to know them. Once you know that there's somebody that's going to be on your side. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to try to get to know Cuba, try to get to know the Cuban people, try to get to know Africans. It's Africans all throughout the whole Western Hemisphere, you know, and you have Africans in places that are autonomous and ruling the areas they live in this hemisphere. So we need to get to know each other and then consciously work to bring our people together. And I do also encourage people to that Cuban medical project program is still ongoing. So if you know high school seniors or people with 1 year of college, they can go to Cuba and become a doctor free, which is amazing. And the only cost is that when you finish that, you come back and you serve the community that you came from. So I think it's a lot to be learned there. And I'm just, well, once again, just thanks the UNIA. I tell everybody UNIA is our mother organization. And I think every African Black Power organization that ever existed owes its origins to the UNIA.
That's why we're still here, my brother. That's why we're still here.
Yeah, and I tell Senghor that since I don't vote for these presidents, y'all is my government. So when I fuss at you, you just have to take it. So,
yeah, and
but
you know, yes, and we do claim it. We do claim it. You know, the UN Universal Negro Improvement Association, African Communities League, the government of African people everywhere.
that's right. So
And, even though we have independent countries all over Africa, it doesn't mean that those countries are governing African peoples everywhere or governing in the interest of African people everywhere. We are still here because we still have need for somebody to have the interests of African people universally.
That's right.
And so
and Cuba is one of the few places in the world with a government that has our people's interests at heart. And that includes all of them governments in Africa. It ain't but one or two or three that you can say have the interests of African people at heart. But Cuba is one of those places. And Africans don't know it. Nicaragua is another place like that. Venezuela is struggling because of their commitment to the poor and the working people of the world. So we just need to get to know each other and organize better and keep doing this kind of information, bringing it to the people, and have faith and confidence. We're going to win. That is a certainty.
Thank you, my brother. It's now 10 p.m. and we're going to close it here. You know, and I just have a few an announcement, and which is that we still are open to membership for Africans everywhere who want to be part and parcel or members of the Universal Negro Improvement Association African Communities League, Rehabilitating Committee 2020. We also want to let you know that the 26th of this month is our next Freedom Friday Forum, and we will have as our guest Dr. Gerald Horn, the famous Gerald Horn, who has so many books. His name, the prolific Gerald Horn, and he will be discussing Cuba and the Caribbean. So keep that in mind. We'll be coming back to you and informing you more on that. So, okay, folks, I will close with the motto of the UNIA-ALC, and that is one God, one aim, one destiny. I thank you.
Peace and love.
Yes, indeed. Faith first. Thank you very much, all. Until next time.
Turn it off.
This is Baba Moses.